And what have you observed over the past 90 days when it comes to the pandemic, the lockdown, and the talk of vaccines? I know we could probably talk for 4 hours about that, but I'm curious.
Well, my first impression was this. As soon as it emerged from Wuhan, I was reminded of a story some years ago when we were doing an investigation and we came in contact with an ex-employee of MI5. And his job at MI5 was as an Uber hacker. He could hack into anything, anytime, anywhere. And he worked for the intelligence service in the UK for a very long time on this, and then left. And he came to us one day, and he'd been doing what he does on computers. He didn't seem to be able to break the habit. And he said, there's just been this outbreak of flu out of China, of SARS, and there was an earthquake in central China that destroyed or damaged a bioweapons facility, and that's where the leak came from. He then immediately got a call from a colleague, still within the service, saying, you want to forget what you've just seen and don't mention a word about it. And by the way, behave yourself in future. So I was reminded of that story, and that, of course, never made it into the public domain. But there it is. Is it true? Is it not true? He had no reason to tell me this, other than he'd found it, doing what he does. So the chances of this being just some escape virus from a bat in a market is nonsense. There are no coincidences. It came from the Wuhan research facility. And what that tells us is that we do these experiments and there are huge, huge consequences to pay. Whether it got out deliberately or whether it got out by accident, whatever happened, doesn't matter. It does matter, but it doesn't matter for the purpose of this discussion, is that these experiments should never be done because they will lead to catastrophe. And when man interferes with nature in this way, particularly through genetic engineering experiments, doing things they know not what will lead to, and then we have a problem. And the other anxiety I have, Brian, is this, that there is a story that the NIH funded these studies in Wuhan when they were actually banned by the Obama administration in the United States. There was an outcry amongst scientists to say we should not be doing these genetic manipulation studies, these what are called gain of function studies to alter the pathogenicity, the dangerousness of this virus. And so I'm told that the research was then moved offshore with NIH funding into Wuhan. Now, if that's true, then I would say that's treason. That is treason. And the consequences, whether true or not, for mankind have been absolutely enormous. And so these kinds of experiments have to stop right now. They should never be restarted. And that was the position that scientists took many years ago. Beyond that, is a vaccine going to be the panacea for this problem? If it's safe and if it's effective, maybe it'll be very good, but never make it mandatory. Do not force a medical procedure on anyone, particularly in the situation we're in at the moment, where there is so much question, there's so many questions about vaccine safety and efficacy. So we're employing, the scientists are employing in the various companies, so many different strategies involving the injection of naked RNA and DNA into people. Once it's in there, you can't switch it on. And you have no idea what it's going to do. And we experienced one of these Frankenstein viruses with the dengue virus vaccine, that they had catastrophic problems with that vaccine after it had already been administered to thousands and thousands and thousands of children. It was then discovered that it didn't protect against dengue. And when they then were exposed to that virus, they got the disease far worse than anyone else, with a lot of deaths. So these things have huge consequences for mankind. And those consequences are transgeneration. They will be felt for a very, very long time. So I am hugely cautious about any approach to vaccinating against a disease, which now the mortality has virtually disappeared. New cases are being diagnosed according to Antibody testing, those aren't cases. Cases talk about morbidity, disease, symptoms. These are people who just happen to have had exposure and recovered from it and have antibodies to it. Those numbers may be increasing because we're testing more, but they are not reflective of what's happening in the disease itself, which is apparently becoming milder, has mutated, and therefore is going to be perhaps immune from any response that we can induce with a vaccine. And I believe there are better alternatives. I believe that a healthy lifestyle, that vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin D, possibly hydroxychloroquine, certainly from the data, are better alternatives. I do not think that a vaccine is going to be the answer to this, but people have invested so much money, and all of their the perception the public might have of their credibility in producing this, that people are now crying out for it. And that's an alarming situation. And this device of fear, this marketing tool of fear, has been seen time and time again. And that's what the movie makes absolutely clear, that it's a device that has been used throughout time.